In this video, we're gonna walk through the 3 feeding modes of the Sourdough Sidekick. Let's start with auto mode. Auto mode is the most hands-off feeding mode of the Sidekick. You will enter the day you would like the starter, how much starter you would like to have on that day and time, and it's hands-off from there, no discard required. So let's see how to do that. You're gonna select mode right on the front screen. Auto is the first option. Select. Next, you're gonna pick the day. When do you want your starter to be ready to mix into your dough? So let's do Saturday morning at 8. So I'm gonna set this to Saturday morning at 8 a.m. Next up, we're gonna select how much starter we'd like to have on that day and time. And it will, in this case, it's 400 grams. I can reduce that, or I can reduce that to some smaller amount, or I can increase it up to 525. I'm gonna select 300 grams. My recommendation is that you account for extra because you're not gonna get all of the starter out of the crock. I typically go maybe 100 grams more than I actually need for my recipe. That accounts for a little bit, stuck to the container, and then a little bit extra if I wanna continue propagating the starter. Next up, it's gonna ask me to add my seed. At this point, you're gonna remove the crock, and then remove the lid and paddle assembly. And you're gonna take seed, which is starter, from a previous grow, from a friend, you can buy it. Starter is available. And then you're gonna add that to the crock. And for reference, 15 grams is about 1 tablespoon. That's why we recommend just put a tablespoon in and you are close enough to 15 grams. Once you do that, reinstall the lid, insert the crock, and then press OK. It's gonna remind you to fill the water, so you wanna be up to your max fill line. You can press the knob to acknowledge that. It's gonna then ask you to fill the flour. You can then press the knob to acknowledge that. And then finally, it's gonna present a summary of your auto mode. So our goal is Saturday at 8 a.m., 300 grams of starter. And then as soon as I press start, it will feed and begin that growing process. When you reach, in this case, Saturday at 8 a.m. and the Sidekick is ready, it will say ready on the screen. And you'll have starter in the crock that's bubbly and ready to go. You've got a pretty big window of time to use that starter. I've gone as long as 8 hours past the ready time and used it in dough, and it worked out great. So you don't stress too much that you gotta use it right at 8 a.m. You've got a window. But then also, you're gonna wanna keep some of it, and either if you'd like to start another grow immediately, you can do that. You can use it as seed for your next auto cycle or ratio cycle or custom cycle. Or you can refrigerate that starter if you wanna just maybe wait a week or 2 weeks or something, if you need to be away for a while. But just a reminder to propagate that, carry over a little bit of seed for your next cycle. You don't wanna lose that. That's sort of the mother culture that you wanna continue to grow. And a reminder, between now and Saturday at 8 a.m., you won't have to interact with your unit. The Sourdough Sidekick will take care of that for you. Now we're gonna talk about ratio mode. This is a mode where I know how I like to feed my starter, typically a 1-to-1-to-1, and I wanna just have the Sidekick feed it for me at that ratio. So I will tell it how much starter I'm putting into the crock, and it will feed it a ratiometric amount of flour and water to maintain the ratio. And it will feed it on the rate that I tell it. So it's probably easiest to just dive in. So we're gonna select mode again and turn from auto to ratio, and then press the knob to select. What this SFW means is starter to flour to water. That's your ratio. So when I say 1-to-1-to-1, if I put in 15 grams of starter, and I would then put in 15 grams of water and 15 grams of flour to be a 1-to-1-to-1. So they're all equivalent. In this case, so I'm gonna press acknowledge here, and then you can see I've got a 1-to-1-to-1, that's the one I just described. I can change that from a 1-to-2-to-2, so that's 1 part starter. If I did 15 grams of starter, it would be 30 grams of flour, 30 grams of water. 1-to-3-to-3, you can continue that math. 15 grams of starter, 45 grams of water, and 45 grams of flour. All the way up to 1-to-5-to-5. This is gonna be a very small amount of starter to much larger amounts of floured water. So this one's gonna actually not do as many feedings. A 1-to-5-to-5, it may only do 1 feeding because it's gonna wanna fill up really fast. and then a 2 to 1 to 1, which is more starter than flour and water. This mode is probably for more experienced bakers, but if you want to understand more, there are more details here on how those ratios work and how much starter you're going to end up with when it tells you to discard. You should check out the website or the use and care manual. For now, I'm going to select a 1 to 1 to 1, and then I'm going to tell it how often I want it to feed. So it'll say frequency, freq, F-R-E-Q for frequency, and if I'm doing ratio mode, I typically like to do every 12 hours, but again, you select what works for you. You got a wide range of how frequently it'll feed. Finally here, it wants to know how much seed because it's got to do the math to maintain the ratio. In this case, it's 15 grams, but I can back that down. Let's say I want to extend that out. I could put 5 grams of starter in, which would be, just a little bit. And then it will, with each feeding, it will maintain that ratio. So the feeding amounts grow with each feeding, which is why it sort of fills up relatively quickly. In this case, let's see how long this will allow me to go before I have to discard. It'll tell me it'll be full in 2 days. So it's gonna do every 12 hours, it's gonna feed it for 2 days. And then it will tell me to discard. Okay, if that is unacceptable to you, you can go back, hit the back button, and I can adjust that seed. So for example, let's say I go to 15 grams of seed. Now it's gonna be full in 1 day because it's gonna exponentially grow faster because I put a larger seed in there. So this allows you to, you can go back and adjust your settings until you get a time that works for you. But I think this will make sense if you use this mode and kind of understand what it's doing. Okay, 15 grams, full in 1 day. It's gonna now tell me to add my 15 grams of seed. Again, 1 tablespoon of starter is about 15 grams. You can scale that appropriately. You don't have to overthink it. Once I acknowledge that, it's gonna remind me to fill the water and fill the flour. You don't want it to run out of flour or water mid-cycle. The hopper and the water tank hold enough flour and water for a full 7-day auto mode, growing to the maximum amount of starter that will go into this crock, which is 525 grams. So you have plenty there for a full cycle. Okay, fill flour. And then finally, it's gonna summarize the ratio mode. 1 to 1 to 1, 15 gram seed every 12 hours. Press start to begin the cycle, it will feed immediately. And now let's talk about custom mode. This one is going to give you the ultimate control between flour and water and feeding timing frequency. Let's dive into that. So again, mode button, turn the knob until I see custom, press knob to enter. Flour, so what this is asking me is how many grams of flour for each feeding do I want it to dispense into the crock? So let's say I'm gonna do 25, that's a long way, huh? 25 grams of flour. Water, let's say I'm gonna do 15. And I'm gonna then tell it how frequently I want it to feed those exact amounts. Here's an important caveat with custom mode is it's not gonna grow those feedings, it's gonna feed them the same. What's an example of a use case? Let's say you always use the same amount of starter every day. You pull 100 grams out of the crock. You can set this up and you know you're gonna leave about 50 grams left in the crock. I can set this up to feed 50 grams of flour, 50 grams of water every 12 hours. And then on my schedule, I can come take a scoop, about 100 grams, maybe a cup. I think that's 227 grams. Adjust appropriately. And then it's just gonna continue the feeding cycle. It's just gonna continue the feeding cycle and I can take out my starter. Back to this, I'm selecting my frequency, how much seed I wanna put in there, from 5 to up to 100 grams, I believe is the upper limit. Yep, you can also, this is maybe a little weird, but you can select no seed. If maybe you're growing a new starter and you wanna experiment with that, maybe you wanna put a certain amount of flour and water in there every 18 hours or every 24 hours, something like that. And then it'll mix for you. And maybe you're gonna come and just discard once a day and let it keep doing that to grow a new starter. Lots of different ways you can use this custom mode, but I think it gives you sort of a lot of flexibility to feed in a very precise way. Similar to ratio mode, once you've selected your settings, it will tell you when it's gonna be full. And that means when it's reached 525 grams of contents in the crock. In this case, it's 3 days. Okay, it's gonna now prompt me to add my seed to the crock. and it's gonna remind me to fill the water and the flour, and then it's gonna summarize. So here we go. We've got 25 grams of flour, 15 grams of water, every 12 hours with 15 grams of seed. And then to start this cycle, just like the others, you're gonna press start. We've got the flashing light there as a reminder. If you don't press start, it will not start this cycle. So be sure you press start when you're ready to begin the cycle. Those are your 3 modes of operation for the Sourdough Sidekick. Another interesting side note is that there is a feature called intermittent mixing. So when you're running one of those modes, the Sidekick every 2 hours will mix for 30 seconds. This is just to keep the food, flour and water, distributed amongst the starter so that it can feed well and develop well, and also to just keep things mixed up nicely for you. So don't be surprised if every 2 hours you get a brief mixing. You can turn that off in the settings menu. Check the use and care to see how to do that. It's pretty self-explanatory. A couple other use cases for these modes, scenarios that may come up for you. Refreshing a starter that you've kept in the fridge. If you've got a starter that's been in the fridge for 2-3 weeks, sometimes longer, I've had some go longer than that, you're gonna need to wake it up before you bake with it. And you can use, for example, ratio mode to really give your refrigerated starter several good 1-to-1-to-1 feedings, maybe even a 2-to-1-to-1, just to really kind of wake it up and get it going. You can see the use and care manual for a description of how best to do that. Another scenario is you wanna grow a new starter from scratch. This will make it's totally possible to do in the Sourdough Sidekick. You're gonna load the flour that you prefer for that effort into your flour hopper, maybe calibrate if you've changed flours. But then you can set it up, and we've got the process outlined in the use and care manual on how we've successfully grown starter multiple times in sometimes as few as 4 days we have an active starter, but it can take up to 14 days. But that's your 3 modes of operation. We'll see you in the next video.